And he's here. He is here. Cristiano has entered the building. Welcome, wherever you are, to the Old Trafford Theatre.
Do us a quick favour, guys. Hit the follow, subscribe button. Share this with someone who would benefit from it. And help us grow, as the more we grow, the better the episodes will get. Thanks, guys, for helping us. And let's get into the episode. Yes, guys, welcome back to the Sculpted Podcast. Today, I am doing a bit of a different type of episode. As you can probably tell, I don't have too much time, unfortunately, to, record an episode while sitting down. And I am on my way to Sydney. So, I have obviously decided to record whilst I'm driving. Now, we'll see how it goes. I don't know if many people have ever done a podcast like this before, but I thought we may as kill two birds with one stone, as they say. And yeah, it's a bit of a creative one, obviously. And we'll see how I go. It's going to be a little bit weird, talking to my phone whilst driving. So hopefully nothing happens, because, well, I guess I've got it on video at least. That would be all right. And we'll see how the audio goes, because the audio will probably be affected by the car. But hopefully Adobe can work some magic on the audio, so it's not too bad. But regardless, today's episode is going to be talking about why you don't have to love the work. So it's a bit of a weird topic, I think, because a lot of people think that you have to love the work that you're doing. And I think that in today's society, everyone's talking about, if you don't love the job that you have, it's the wrong job for you. Oh, sunny. Sorry. So everyone's talking about, if you don't love the work that you're doing, then it's not the right job for you. Now, I take a very different approach to this. And now this could be completely personal. And I'm very aware of the fact that if you are not in the pursuit of excellence, or you are not in the, let's say, the pursuit of becoming the best at said thing, where it's a journey that's different to others. So let's say you're a teacher and you don't want to become the best teacher in the world, then you can be okay with loving the job. And in that case, I would say you probably should love the job that you're doing. Where in my case, I'm saying you don't have to. Now that's because in the chosen area of which I want to go down, it's a very, very niche path where it's such a competitive world where the people who end up loving the job might not end up the top, because that might be a hindrance to the path of which they want to go down. And what I mean by that is, if I love playing football and eventually I stop loving it, then I quit. And if you quit, you'll never become the best at it. Now, if you don't like teaching anymore, you still can do it, because one, the consequence of you doing it and choosing another profession, it's probably not too difficult, so you can even go into something different. So you don't have to love it again, but most people do love teaching, whether that's because they like to help kids out or whatever it is. I think that a lot of people would, if you're a teacher, you probably like doing it. Now, I think it's better if you do like doing it as a teacher, because maybe it's a mundane job. Maybe it's not too fun for the average person to do. Now, I think that teachers get a lot of joy out of seeing a child grow and get better. So again, maybe they don't really like the teaching aspect, but they like the aspect of helping kids in their own journey. Now, that could even be a process-based profession of which they don't like doing the work, but they like the end result. So even then, you don't have to love what you're doing, but you can love the end result. And I think that's quite common in quite a lot of professions. Now, the the problem, I believe, with having people say that they need to love the work that they're doing, I think that there's a problem in that. Because every single day, something different will happen. And sometimes that difference in your day-to-day life dictate your emotion. And if you come into that same job of which you supposedly love every single day, and you come in with that same attitude, thinking that this job's going to be the saving grace to your happiness, you're wrong. Life sucks. Life will always win. Life will get in the way. And loving your job, whatever it is not always a helpful thing. Now, as I've mentioned, loving your job in some aspects is a good thing. Now, as I referred to a teacher, teachers can love their job. Got no problem with that. And if they don't love anything else and they just love teaching, sure, it's good. You know, I think that one reason why a lot of people also like teaching is not just because it's a fulfilling job internally sometimes, but it's also very rewarding in the aspect of where they are able to get a lot of holidays. You know, they get pretty decent pay, consistent, reliable, all of that. You can love that. And again, that's not even necessarily loving the job, but it's just loving the profession of which you do and the result of which that profession fulfills and bears fruit. And then also the things that come along with it, which is the reward of holidays. You know, you're able to spend more time with your family, and I'm sure that teachers love that. Getting good pay, I guess that depends on where you are, but you're able to spend more time with your family as a teacher, you know, you can definitely love that. Now, as I was kind of mentioning before, where you don't have to love it, and I don't think that loving it's always a good thing, because if you stop loving it, then you're going to stop doing it. And I also believe that I think that if you love whatever you're doing as well, then when you get that hurdle, you probably stop doing that thing. So whether it's as a footballer, you get injured and you lose the love for it. That's a common one that I hear a lot, actually. People lose the love for the game, they say. Now, for me, I guess, sure, you could say this is controversial, but I never had a love for football. But I'm still doing more training than you. I'm still devoting my life more than you to football. And I never had a love for it in the first place. But why is it that I'm doing so much more for you, but I never liked it in the first place? So if you get what I'm saying here, what I'm saying is, and I would like to have someone actually counter this belief, because I personally don't get this belief countered too often. My mum and my sister and my dad, they might counter it a little bit, but I do think that there's truth to it, which is why maybe it isn't countered too often, because you aren't meant to enjoy every single day. Because how would you know that something is a good thing without knowing what the bad is? Now that's deep. How do you know that something is good if you don't know what the bad is? Now think about that. Think about that to a deep, deep level. If I am being rewarded for whatever I'm doing, whether it's, let's say, okay, let's go with a food aspect because it's instant gratification. Let's say you're eating sweets and you're eating sugars and you're not eating anything else. That probably comes quite mundane for you. So your good is at such a high level because it's constant reward, instant gratification. It's constantly good. It's constantly at the best it can be. Trying to get something better, that will be your happiness, because at the level of homeostasis is such a high level of dopamine and reward that the only way you can get happiness is from even higher dopamine and reward. Therefore, if we relate that into a life aspect of, let's say, football. Okay, this is going to be a tricky one to relate to, but let's say I am constantly loving the game and there's nothing better than the game of football. Now, life will naturally bring things that are better than football for you in a reward aspect of dopamine. There will be things. Now, as soon as you start loving that thing more than football, then if you're going off the base, do the things that you love, then you'll just move on to the next thing. So do you see what I'm saying here? So if you're going off the basis, I'm doing what I love, then whatever you love the most in that time, and naturally as humans, we will change. We will adapt. We will evolve. As humans, we will change. So if you keep on changing as an individual, then the things that you love will naturally change. Now, I don't believe that many people genuinely have a love for football. I think the affiliation of having a love towards a certain thing, maybe a certain feeling, is very natural in terms of I love the feeling of winning. Now, if I was to go play another sport and have the feeling of winning, I'd probably have the exact same emotion. It's just that football got to me first. That could be a common thing for some people. Maybe they haven't gone outside of football, so they don't know that they love other things other than football. But for me, when I say that I don't love football, I believe that this helps me because I won't ever quit football because I lost the love for it, because I never had the love for it in the first place. I won't quit football because I don't find it engaging. I don't find it fun, these things. I won't ever quit because of a thing where you might quit, where you will quit because, external reasons or maybe internal reasons, those things that make you quit or make you stop doing something. And I think even the amount of which you do it, I think that a lot of people who do something for the love of it, maybe you do have to have, I'm not going to use the word balance, but maybe you do have to have a degree of healthy relationship with it, where if you do too much of it, and just like when you spend too much time with a person, I'm not going to say that you don't love that person anymore, but you become irritated. And when it's not a person, it's a thing of which you do. You're just going to become irritated with football. So if you do it too much, you're going to eventually lose the love. And that's what you see with a lot of people. They say they lose the love for the game because they're doing it too much. Now, if I'm doing it too much, but I never had a love for it in the first place, then I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going more than you. So I think having a love for it isn't necessarily the best way. If you want to become the best footballer on the world, now sure, if you want to become an average footballer, professional footballer that is, or if you just want to play for fun, I used to have a problem with that, but this was something that I've come to realization recently, that you can love football and just play football for football. I never really used to understand that, but speaking with a few more people, relating it to aspects of my life where I do things for fun and that's it. Now, I don't really do things for fun. That's not me, but I've noticed things which I might do that I may have previously also done for fun. Now, as I said, I don't really do things for fun anymore. But when I did, I could see how I could have a healthy relationship. Like, I wouldn't do it too much, but I'd do it every now and then for fun. That's it, just for fun. Now, the people who play football for fun, I don't think that they can sustainably do it, right? Because if you do it to a certain amount, you probably will lose the love for it eventually. And that's the thing. That's what I'm kind of saying here. If you do it often enough, and if you do it to a professional level, I think that you have to lose the love for it. You have to disassociate with it because you're going to have an unhealthy relationship with it, because you shouldn't be doing something that much that you love, because eventually it will become boring. And so it should be, because if you want to become very good at something, you have to do it often. And when you do something often, you lose the love for it because it just becomes normal. It becomes boring. And you reach that level of homeostasis of which it's just normal. Referring it back to having a very dopamine rewarding and rich nutrition, to where the next best thing has to be better than your current level. So if you're constantly doing that thing and it doesn't get any better, you don't get more love for it. And I think that loving football, again, it's not loving necessarily the game, it's loving the results. Now that, if you just love the results of football, which I can relate to, then there's always more to do, because you can't, to reach the top and to reach the most amount of results in football, you have to be at the top 0.001%. So your love for the results, completely agree with that. That makes complete sense. And having a love for the results, I've got no problem with that. But people mask it in loving football. Now, I don't think that people love football in the highest level. Because if you truly love football, you would have had to have not played as much football as the others who have played football as long as you. So that's a confusing concept to get around. But what I'm saying is that if you really love what you do, you can't do it to the same extent of which people who don't love it do it. So if we were to compare myself and the next guy who loves football, he's going to be training, let's say, for a healthy amount of sustainable love to a certain thing. Let's say that they have to be doing it 3 times a week. Now, training 3 times a week for, let's say, an hour and a half. 3 times, let's say a game as well. Now, let's include the game in that. So they're playing football 3 times a week, including the game. So they're training twice a week, and they're wanting to go on a professional journey. So they've played in a week 4.5 hours of football, nothing more, nothing less, and they've got a healthy relationship with football. Now, in that 4.5 hours, you're telling me that they have to be more efficient and more, I guess, specific in what they're doing in that 4.5 hours than me to become better than me. Because if I am doing 20 hours of football and I am very, very precise, focused, and specific with my training sessions, then my growth is going to be exponential compared to theirs. The amount of work that they're doing because of the love of the game and they want to become a professional footballer, that's just, the work I will overpower the amount of work that they're doing. They are doing a quarter of the work that I'm doing out of the love of the game, but me, I'm doing it out of just the results, right? My growth will be so much quicker than theirs and so much more purposeful and powerful. And again, if they're doing it for the love of the game, they're not putting in the same amount of detail, attention, and effort as I am. Therefore, their training, their games, they aren't as precise as me because their focus is towards enjoyment. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy playing football because I enjoy doing and chasing the things of which I put out in front of me to do. So I enjoy that. But I don't enjoy the training sessions of which are difficult. I don't enjoy dedicating my whole life to it, but I do it, and I do it more than you. So I don't know why you're still doing it for the love of it if you want to compete at the highest level or even compete at a decent level. Because if you're doing only 4.5 hours of training a week and you still want to get to a good level, the people who don't love it will get there before you. And now, I really think, right, the level of professional football, you can go to Germany, the 3rd division, you can go to the 4th division in England, maybe even the 5th division in England, maybe the 4th division in Germany. You can go to the 1st division in Australia. You can go to the 2nd division in the US. You can go to the 2nd division in Uruguay. You can go to the 2nd division in Brazil. All of those players, probably the exact same. They all do the same job as the other. The only reason why they have a job is because they need to fill spots in the team. It's not because they've got that flair about it. Now, the people at the next level, they've got a bit of flair to them. You know, they do the job a little bit better or a little bit more consistently than the others. Maybe they have a better range of passing. Maybe they've got more composure on the ball. Maybe they've got a bit more skill on the ball. Maybe they've got as I said, you know, they've got that flair about them. That's what separates the baseline. And I believe that anyone in the world can get to that baseline because at the end of the day, it's not having that flair about you. It's just the being able to repeatedly do what you need to do. That's what the baseline of professional football is. So I believe that anyone can get to that level. No matter what your life has thrown in your way in terms of being physically fit enough at least, I believe that anyone can get to that level because it is a set job. You know, there's no criteria. Sorry, there is a criteria to it. And that's expected. And I do believe that anyone can get to that. So let's say if you're doing it for the love of football, and you want to get to that level, sure, do it for the love, but maybe you won't get there because, maybe you get released and maybe you don't love it anymore because you got released. That might happen. So the love can only probably get you so far because at the top, when you're really competing with the top level people, they can't love it because they're doing it an unhealthy amount to it. Now, it's not an unhealthy amount to, it's like, going to kill you, but it's an unhealthy amount to you to still love it because you can't love doing something so often, and that's what I'm saying. It's just very, very difficult to get to that point of, and I'm not going to use the word balance, but you could substitute the word balance here, but I don't use the word balance because I don't like the connotation of which comes with it, because people believe that balance is balancing out a weight. Now, as I've kind of mentioned, I understand a little bit now towards the people who want so and so balance. And I can understand that if you don't want to become the best in the world or whatever you're doing, then maybe you can have that. But for me, that's just not really an option because whatever I do, I'm not satisfied with mediocre. I'm not okay with that. Therefore, balance is not an option, and it's not a feasible way of getting what I want. So the love for something is it's out of the cards for me. It's just not a way of which is sustainable for me to keep, because so many other people are able to do more without loving it. That's what I want you guys to understand, is that the people who don't love it are able to do more because the love for something has to be healthy. Now, as I've said, the obsession for football doesn't have to be healthy in terms of having a love for it, because it's not going to get you to the top because it's so competitive. Football is so competitive. So the love won't get you to the top. It might get you to the baseline of professional football, of which I've said is common for all levels of football. I think that if you want to be a professional footballer, you can do it. If you don't ever give up, I think that you can actually do it. Now, I'm not taking into account for exceptions of where maybe there's a health condition that's stopping someone, or there's an injury of which has put someone out for multiple years and they can't do X, Y, and Z. But I'm saying for the majority of people who are in this pursuit, they can do it. No exceptions. To the ring. So maybe for the love of the game, you can get there. Now, the people who say that they really, really love football and they're at the top, I question that. Now, this is again where I'd want someone else to be on the podcast to speak about and challenge me, because I don't have that other view. I'm only with my own thoughts right now. And I only really speak to people who are, I believe, like me in this area. But having the love, the top players, they can't. I think that it's wrapped in the results. Because loving the results, you can always do better. How can you always do better at loving football? I don't know. I don't think you can. So if I'm thinking, if I want to love football a bit more to keep me going, I don't think that that's possible, because what's the next best thing than loving football a little bit more? I think it's finding another thing that's not football. That's what I think. Now, again, I'm only through my own thoughts. So I don't know what's right or wrong. I'm only thinking that this is my personal anecdotes, and this is what makes sense to me when I articulate it to you guys and when I articulate it in my head. But I think that if you're a top footballer, you can't love it, because training day in, day out, multiple times a day, especially when there's a team regulating that, I think that you can't sustainably love that. Like training every single day as a professional footballer, even me, for someone who doesn't love it, going into a training session, I find that difficult by much again. So that's what I feel about for people quote unquote love the game or lose love for the game, and why not loving the game is important for reaching the top. Now, if we get to talking about why not loving the game is really, really good, I believe, and how it can help you is by the trial and tribulation of said journey. Humans are not meant to be happy all of the time. In fact, if you are happy all of the time, back to the nutrition point, you aren't happy all the time, because if you're happy all the time, it's implying that you've also had sadness in that point, unhappy moments. Because without happy, there's no sad. No, wait. Hold on. Without sad, there's no happy, and without happy, there's no sad. I don't know if I still don't really understand what I'm saying. Hold on. What I'm trying to say in not a cliche way, which is what I was saying then, is that for you to have happiness, there has to be sadness, because you have to be able to distinguish what is giving you the reward and what is not giving you the reward. Because if you're having this constant streamlined level of said emotion, then that is just baseline normal feeling. So if you have baseline normal feeling, and sure, it could be the highest level of feeling of where, you're constantly feeling good. But if you're constantly feeling good, that's your new normal. So for you to experience anything beyond that, which would be your perceived happiness, because happiness is a level of emotion that's better than normal. So if your level of normal is so high, then your level of normal is going to have to be beyond most people's. So if you have a really good experience, you have to have had some bad experience. Now, I also think that having bad experience is good, not just for that level of where you can level up your happiness. Just if you're extremely sad, one thing would happen to you. So let's say if you're extremely sad for 99% of your life, and then you have one really good day, that one really good day is going to be the best day you've ever lived, because the rest of your days were bad. Okay? So if you have one really good day, that will be the best moment of your life, because everything else was bad. Now, the reason why bad is good is because if you are able to learn from the bad and make your level of bad, let's say, your mundane life. Now, on the opposite or the adjacent side of the extreme level of reward and happiness, which some people may get through day-to-day fulfillment, through day-to-day dopamine release, the next best thing they have to achieve is the higher level, right? Which is sometimes unattainable for most. But if you're at the lower level and your happiness only needs to come from small things, of which it might be seeing your grandchildren. Now, this is what I'm relating it to for old people. They don't have much happiness in their life. So when they see their grandchildren, it's the best thing for them. Now, I think it's not a bad way of life. It's the small things, and you actually might hear people saying when they're older, it's the happiest time of their life because the small things matter so much. Now, that's because there's so much boring and mundane things in their life that when they get something small, and when something good to them happens, it's so good. Now, I can relate that to my training. So when I'm training, and I don't like doing it, but I'm constantly seeking that next thing, constantly seeking that next fulfillment. And what that could be for grandparents, it's like, I'm going to live another day. I want to live another day. I want to get the most out of my day so that maybe I can see my grandchildren. Imagine that. Imagine having such a low level of reward and dopamine to which the smallest things are rewarding. Now, if the smallest things are rewarding to you, that means they come less frequently. Think about that. So if you're getting constant small things happening to you, then that becomes your new level of homeostasis. So then the next best thing has to happen. Now, what I think that sports is good, why sports can be good for this, and why it's important, is because you don't get many moments of happiness or moments of reward. They can come through achievement, through training, through progress, but this only comes through action. It doesn't come naturally, particularly. Sure, it can happen through little lessons in sports sometimes, in which maybe your team's doing well, you don't have much to contribute, but still you do have some contribution through your presence, through your action of being amongst the team. That can happen, sure. But it's something that happens less frequently than other jobs, other professions. Let's say it's the weekend you win, feel good, great. It's still not a higher level. Feels good in the moment, sure, move on, next thing. But if we're thinking about the championship, you're winning the championship. You only get it once a year. Let's say you win it, let's say you don't win it. You're probably not going to win it 2 years in a row. You're probably not going to win it 3 years in a row. Let's say you win it a few years in a row. You're very lucky, but it probably statistically won't happen many times again. Now, the love of the pursuit is a real thing. It's what I have. The love of getting better, the love of improving. Now, I think that's important that I have a love for improving because you can always get better, so I'll always have a love for improving. I can have an unhealthy relationship with improving because you do get... Now, I'm going to have to think about this. So, if I have a healthy love for improving, I do get gratification along the way. Each training session, I think that I can get gratification along the way. But also, I probably get unsatisfaction from it. So I guess what that is, it's always a constant pursuit. So it's always going to be keeping me on my toes because I might have a bad session and I might have to reevaluate and reassess where I'm at. So I think that the unhealthy relationship with improving and obsessing can be healthily unhealthy because my obsession with obsession is purposeful. So if I obsess over something too much, then my obsession will help me to realize that obsessing over that isn't the best thing. So it's two levels of obsession. So I'm obsessing over an obsession. Now this is something hard to conceptualize if you haven't been here before, I think. So what I'm saying, my level of obsession is healthy because my obsession to the obsession is keeping me obsessed. Now that's wild. That's very difficult to understand, but I'm going to try and relate this to... Okay, I can give this a personal anecdote to where I have obsessed too much and then toned down that obsession because I realized it wasn't helping me. But I started acting on that because I realized that if I wanted to become the best at something, my obsession for that thing had to be toned down. But if I wasn't obsessed, then I wouldn't have toned it down. So my obsession of obsessing over something is still there, but the obsession to the original thing, so the obsession over football, has changed. But the obsession of becoming the best footballer in the world hasn't changed. Wow, that's actually exactly what I want to say. So my obsession with football, and just the obsession with football and becoming better as a footballer, stays stagnant because I need to find out the right level of obsession for it. So the obsession for that pursuit, the obsession for the pursuit stays stagnant. It's always going to be as obsessive as tomorrow. But the obsession level for football and whatever that football looks like will change dependent on the results of which I am getting. So if I am obsessing too much with football, and this is what I did, I would train before a game because I wanted to improve as much as possible. So I was obsessing over that too much, and then that was hindering my performance. So I wasn't cognitively there because, as Dan Abrams has gone through before, how the cognitive attention span of which can be fulfilled at the highest level is limited. It's a limited resource. So you have to obsessively manage that obsession for football to get the most out of it. So therefore, you have to manage your obsession, but you can still be obsessed with managing your obsession's obsession. Very, very difficult, complex to get around. But I'm gonna relate this more to that personal anecdote. So me toning down my obsession with football, if I wasn't obsessed with the results, but only obsessed with football, then I would have kept training on match day because I was obsessed with football. Because I'm obsessed with the results of me obsessing over football, I then toned it down to regulate my obsession of football. So my obsession level is still there, but my approach and obsession with football has changed because my obsession with the results of which come with football is still very relevant. Now, again, this makes sense to me, and I'm articulating it in the moment with you. So I haven't done this specifically and gone through this many times of where I have gone and, let's say, gone through specific moments of when I have thought about my obsession for obsessing. I haven't really thought about that too much. But now speaking with you, I'm putting it into words. And I think that it makes sense. But I can't, because I don't have a second person here speaking with me, I can't relate it perfectly. I'm going to have bias, and I'm going to have confirmation bias in that because it's just me here. Now, I am aware of what I'm saying could be completely wrong. I'm aware of what I'm saying could be completely misunderstood. I'm aware of all of that. But I'm trying to also oppose my view. Now, how can we oppose that view? I think that, let's say, now it's going to be difficult for me to oppose it because I am so strongly believing of what I'm saying because it's where I think my headspace is. And I think it's where my headspace has been for quite some time. So how could I counteract this belief? Let's think about it. If I was to counteract this belief, is obsession bad? Now, I think this goes back to the love of it. Now, maybe obsession is bad in some areas. Okay, let's think about having a complete obsession for football. That's bad because I've already said if I was completely obsessed with football, then I would have kept training on that match day. So if I kept training on that match day, and I was so obsessed with football, then I wouldn't be able to become the best in the world. But also, my obsession becoming the best in the world doesn't have to do with football in that aspect because my obsession for the results is driven through the football obsession. I think my camera's a little bit. So I think that obsession, to a degree, has to be unhealthy. Let's get the focus back in. The obsession has to be unhealthy. Now, is that a bad thing? It definitely comes with negative repercussions. So what I mean by that is if I am obsessing over something, then my focus and attention has to be deferred or deterred from somewhere else. Therefore, there will be consequences for my obsession. Yes. Full stop. There will be consequences for my obsession. Whether I'm okay with those consequences or not is purely subjective and is purely perspective. What I mean by that is, am I okay with moving overseas and spending less time with my family because of an obsession? I'm okay with that only if I get this result. So again, I'm bringing the two aspects of obsession into it. So to a degree, that second aspect of obsession is keeping it healthy, but also keeping it unhealthy. So it's a regulation and monetization of two levels of obsession. That's a difficult concept to get around. So I'm gonna keep going with this secondary perspective, and I'm thinking of which the obsession is bad because it's going to come with repercussions. Now, the level of repercussions is subjective to the people who I'm around. It's subjective to my perspective as well. So it's whether I believe that my obsession to this thing is going to reap results, reap rewards, bear fruit. I believe that if I do become a professional footballer, my relationship with my family will be better. I believe that my relationship with the people who I'm around will be better. I believe that the life lessons of which football can teach me will be better for that obsession. Therefore, I see the trade-off of obsessing over football as a beneficial trade-off for me in my life right now. Now, that could change. I don't know. It could change them. So right now, I see that obsession with the return on investment of my time, my energy, and my everything, really. I see that return on investment quite high. Now, that can change. That can change due to internal stimulus or external stimulus. Now, that could change to external stimulus because let's say something happens with my family, of which maybe I need to spend more attention to. Now, I can't spend more time with them. Now, that perception and attention of which I dedicate to football may have to change because of the importance and the what is it called when you have something at a higher level than another? The importance, I forgot the word, but it's kind of like the relevance of which you pay attention to something. So the prioritization. So the priority of my vision of where I want to go can change due to situations in my life. So right now, in the current situations and the perspective and the priorities of which I have, professional football and becoming the best in the world is still a sustainable thing for me. Now, if you look at the best in the world, they would have had to have had that perspective stay pretty stagnant for most of their life. Or they would have had the trade-off be more returning and more fulfilling for them to keep doing it than to stop doing it. Now, very difficult concept to get around again. And I don't know completely how I can relate that to. But to the point of which I've been saying now, the obsession and the trade-off has to return on the reward of which you give to it. That's, again, it's not an easy concept to come to. But it's something that maybe only some people can allocate. It's something that maybe only a certain demographic of people can conceptualize. And maybe this is why a lot of people just stop because maybe they don't conceptualize this. Maybe they don't understand why they feel this emotion, or maybe why they've lost the love of something, for example. Maybe they don't understand why their priorities have changed. Maybe it's due to external events of which maybe their priorities have changed. This can be reasons why people stop doing something. And I can't give you a complete reason or a complete crystal ball knowledge of my current circumstance and where that is. But I'm telling you right now, for where I am right now, in this moment, for me, the current trade-off of becoming a professional footballer and obsessing over something, that trade-off is still the investment and return on that investment of my time, money, everything. I see that being as more financially beneficial, more time beneficial, more freedom beneficial in the long term than it is for me right now. Than it is for me wherever I am. So what I mean is where I am right now, the goal of which I want to pursue is something of a trade-off of which I'm willing to give away, because I think that what I get for that trade-off is more than what I give. So that is completely subjective to an individual. Now, I can't say for every single individual that is playing football would have that same approach. There might be people where they're not actually getting a return on the time and effort of which they're giving, and that may be due to they actually have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, and if they're too busy worrying about football, that they might not be able to live for a long life. So if their obsession becomes too life altering, so there has to be a degree of what is it called when you privilege. There has to be a degree of privilege to actually even pursue a goal of that magnitude, or there has to be a degree of such dire lack of privilege to where it's do or die. The middle ground, yeah, maybe you still can, but I feel like there has to be more raw innate talent to get to the top pickup than anyone else, so you can start reaping the reward earlier. Because to a degree, if you pursue something for too long and your identity is ingrained in that thing, not to an emotional level, but to where that's the only thing you can afford to be doing, then that will come with consequences if you don't get rewarded for it. So if you're in the mediocre level of football and you aren't getting rewarded for it, eventually you probably have to stop, because then your life will take over. You can't live at home for too long. You can't know where your meal's coming from. Maybe you don't even have somewhere to live now. Now, let's say you're at the very bottom of privilege and it's do or die. Literally, it's all you've got. You'd rather go out trying than die not doing anything. So you'd rather give it all you can. Or you have to be privileged enough for you to fail at what you're doing to then fall back on something else. So I'm in a situation of which I am privileged enough to where I am able to quit football tomorrow and not reap major repercussions for doing that said action. So I have a lot of privilege in that. Therefore, my obsession is okay because I am able to have that trade-off of privilege. Now, as mentioned, I think that you could also have that lack of privilege and have the same trade-off, because maybe you have to. And notice that use the word have to, because it is so dire that you have to do something else. Now, in the position of which I am, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to. I'm privileged enough to where what I can do it to a low level and still live. Okay. Now, also the country in which I live in allows me to do that, because if I was to not work for a month and show the government that I'm doing that, I would be able to get paid. So it's a cheap way of life, and it's a very unfulfilling way of life. But I could do that. So that's kind of the level of privilege and unprivilege, which comes with pursuing goal of 0.01%. Now, what I want to also talk about is the life aspect of why failure and disappointment is so important. And it kind of does tune with what I've been saying, but also about the homeostasis levels. But now I want to go into the terms of where being sad and being not completely happy with where you are is important, because it brings you to it keeps you accountable, I think. If you're constantly sad with where you are, then the only way of which you can get out of that sadness should be a driving factor for change. Because if you aren't happy with something, it should make you want to change something. And I think that what depression And what that victim mentality does is it's looking in the future and not seeing possibility for change. So it's kind of looking at the past as well and seeing things of which you have done and the things that which you may be doing in the future. There's no positive way out of it. That's what I think that depression could be. I think that it's the framing of events and the perception of events of which have happened in one's life up to a point, and then also the future projectile for one's life after that point. And that can be framed in a very negative way, of which him as an individual. So if you can then frame the events of which have happened to you in your life so far to shape the individual of who you are today in not a positive aspect, because you can't shape every action of which has happened to you into a positive aspect unless you're okay with the person of who you are. So if you aren't okay with everything in your life shaping you as the person who you are, then I would say you're probably not okay with the person of who you are. Because if you can't understand that the surroundings and the events which have happened to you today have shaped the person who is sitting right in front of you, right here, right? If I can't conceptualize that every single event of which has happened to me since the day that I was born or could understand human consciousness has shaped the level of which I am right now, then you can't understand who you are as an individual, because if you question things, then you can't direct the reason for that shaping to identify with that thing. Now, I don't think I've said that too well. But what I'm trying to say is that identity of an individual comes through the past and comes through the future projectile. So if I'm saying that I believe that I can do this because of I know my tendencies, or I know what I can do in the future to make those tendencies happen, then I can have a framed perspective of everything that has happened to me. It's happened for a reason, and it could be my fault. And if it's not my fault, I've had influence over it. And if I haven't had direct influence over it, I can directly influence the future projection of that thing. That is something that people will have to come to terms with, because it's the truth. It's not an easy truth to come to terms with, because it does mean taking extreme accountability and responsibility for those things. But if you do frame things in that perspective, you'll be better off for it, which is interesting. Because if you are able to frame things for being better off for believing in something, even if it's the wrong way of thinking, maybe it can help you get to that right way of thinking, because of the delusion of which is actually helpful. So there is a level of helpful delusion to help you get to where you want. Because if you aren't that thing, then the only way you get to that thing, and if you aren't that thing completely, the only way you can get to that thing is through a level of delusion. And that's important, but I think also understanding the level of delusion is also important, because you can't be completely delusional. Being completely delusional it's not, I wouldn't say unhealthy, but it comes with a lack of self-awareness. And a lack of self-awareness is bad, because then you can't have the empathy, the social skills to get the most out of yourself even. So I think that that's important to have the understanding and things like that. But yeah, to the point really is we have to understand who we are as people, and we have to take responsibility for the things of which happen to us, because that will help us get the most out of our lives. So taking extreme accountability and responsibility. How can you do that? Now, it's not an easy thing to do, but I think the first step is actually understanding what I've said previously and what I repeated. Maybe every single episode, I probably repeated this quite frequently. That the things which happen to you are down to the result of everything that you've done in your life. if it's because the way someone's treating you, that's your fault. Yes, it can be their fault as well, but if you did it differently, they would treat you differently. If you didn't do this to someone, they would do this to you. Now, I'm not saying it's a complete inverse response. There are good in people. There is more good than bad in people typically. And there will be a good individual should be able to understand, and a high empathetic person, someone with a good social understanding of how people work at least, would be able to understand to treat everyone with the same amount of respect, no matter what they've gone through. Now, that is assuming that that person is a good individual, and you can't always assume that out of everyone. And everyone is going through a battle of which you maybe don't know about, whether it's an internal battle or an external battle. People are constantly going through things that you don't know about. And maybe you do know about it, but maybe you don't understand it to the extent of which that person is going through, because maybe you can't relate to it. So having that social skill to understand an individual's perception is very important to get the most